The Indian subcontinent, a vast, sprawling land of extraordinary diversity, not just in its landscapes and wildlife, but in its human history. For millennia, this has been a stage for some of the world's most magnificent empires and dynasties. From the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas to the sun-drenched shores of the Indian Ocean, countless rulers have risen and fallen, each leaving an indelible mark on the tapestry of time. Their stories are etched into the very soil, whispered on the winds that sweep across the Great Plains, and reflected in the eyes of the people who inhabit this land today. I'm Amira Rafiq, and today we embark on a remarkable journey, a grand safari through the annals of history. We will trace the epic saga of the subcontinent's rulers, exploring the rise of mighty empires from the dust of antiquity and witnessing their eventual decline. Our path will take us through the ancient world of the Mauryas and Guptas into the turbulent medieval period of sultanates and regional kingdoms. We will delve into the unparalleled opulence of the Mughal court and stand with the defiant regional powers who resisted them. Finally, we will navigate the complex era of colonial domination, a period that reshaped the destiny of millions, culminating in the birth of new nations. This is not just a story of kings and conquerors, of battles and betrayals. It is a story of art, science, faith, and the enduring spirit of a civilization that has, time and again, reinvented itself. So join me as we travel back in time to meet the epic rulers of the subcontinent. Our story begins over 2,000 years ago in the fertile plains of the Ganges. Here, a new power was stirring, one that would unite the subcontinent under a single banner for the first time. This was the Maurya Empire. Its architect was a young, ambitious man named Chandragupta Maurya. Guided by his shrewd advisor, Chanakya, he overthrew the preceding Nanda dynasty and forged an empire that stretched from the Bay of Bengal to the mountains of Afghanistan. It was a colossal undertaking, a testament to military genius and political acumen, establishing a centralized administration that was unprecedented in its scale and complexity. The empire reached its zenith under Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka. Initially, he was a ruthless conqueror, much like his forebears, expanding the empire through bloody conflict. The Kalinga War, a campaign of immense brutality, proved to be a turning point. Witnessing the horrific suffering he had caused, Ashoka underwent a profound transformation. He renounced violence and embraced Buddhism, a decision that would not only change him, but would echo across Asia for centuries to come. His reign became a unique experiment in governance, one guided by compassion and moral principle. Ashoka's edicts, carved on pillars and rocks scattered across his vast domain, stand to this day as a remarkable record of his philosophy. He spoke not of conquest, but of Dhamma, a code of righteous conduct, tolerance, and non-violence. He sponsored the construction of stupas and viharas, spreading the teachings of the Buddha far beyond the borders of India. Ashoka the Great was more than an emperor. He was a philosopher king who sought to rule not through fear but through righteousness, leaving a legacy of peace that remains an inspiration. After the decline of the Mauryas, the subcontinent fragmented once more. Centuries passed before another great power emerged from the heartland of Magadha to usher in an era of unparalleled prosperity and creativity. This was the Gupta Empire, often hailed as India's classical or golden age. Its foundation was laid by Chandragupta I, a local ruler who, through strategic alliances and conquest, elevated his dynasty to imperial status. He set the stage for a period of remarkable cultural flowering, a time when art, science, and literature would reach extraordinary new heights. His son, Samudragupta, was a formidable conqueror, a military genius who vastly expanded the empire's boundaries. Inscriptions describe him as a musician and a poet, a warrior who was as skilled with the veena as he was with the sword. His campaigns unified much of northern India, and his influence extended deep into the south. Yet, this era is remembered less for its military might and more for the intellectual ferment it fostered. It was a time of stability and wealth, creating the perfect conditions for a cultural renaissance to take hold across the land. The peak of this golden age arrived under the reign of Chandragupta II, celebrated in legend as Vikramaditya. His court was famously adorned with the Navaratnas, or 9 gems, a group of the most brilliant scholars, poets, and artists of the time, including the great playwright Kalidasa. During this period, monumental advances were made in mathematics, with the development of the concept of zero and the decimal system. Astronomy flourished, with scholars accurately calculating the length of the solar year. This was a time of enlightenment, a beacon of knowledge that would illuminate the world for centuries to come. Before the rise of the Mauryas, the stage of power in northern India was dominated by another formidable dynasty, the Nandas. Based in the prosperous kingdom of Magadha, the same region that would later birth the Mauryan and Gupta empires, the Nandas were rulers of immense wealth and military strength. They are often credited with being the first empire builders of India, creating a centralized state that controlled a significant portion of the Gangetic Plains. Their power was legendary, their treasury said to be overflowing with riches accumulated through systematic taxation and trade. The founder, Mahapadmananda, is described in ancient texts as a man of humble origins who rose to overthrow the preceding Shishunaga dynasty. He was a powerful and ambitious ruler, earning titles such as the destroyer of all Kshatriyas, indicating his subjugation of the traditional warrior class. Under his rule and that of his successors, the Nanda army became a feared force, fielding vast numbers of infantry, cavalry, and, most notably, war elephants. This military machine deterred even the world's greatest conqueror, Alexander the Great, whose weary troops famously mutinied at the banks of the Beas River, refusing to face the mighty Nanda forces. Despite their power, the Nandas were portrayed in later texts, particularly those sympathetic to the Mauryas, as unpopular and avaricious rulers. Their immense wealth was supposedly amassed through oppressive taxation, leading to resentment among their subjects. This perception of tyranny, whether entirely accurate or not, created the fertile ground for a revolution. It was this potent combination of immense power and public discontent that the young Chandragupta Maurya and his mentor Chanakya would expertly exploit, bringing the Nanda dynasty to a dramatic end and seizing control of their vast, well-organized empire. At the turn of the second millennium, new powers arrived from the northwest, bringing with them, a new faith and a new form of governance. From these waves of invasion, a powerful new state emerged, centered on the strategic city of Delhi. This was the Delhi Sultanate, a succession of 5 Turco-Afghan dynasties that would rule over large parts of the subcontinent for more than 300 years. Its founder, Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, was actually a former slave who rose through the military ranks to establish the Mamluk, or slave dynasty. He marked his victory by beginning the construction of the Qutub Minar, a towering minaret that still dominates the Delhi skyline even today. The Sultanate, really, was a realm forged and maintained by the sword. Among its most formidable rulers was Alauddin Khilji of the Khilji dynasty. A ruthless and brilliant military strategist, he expanded the Sultanate's borders to their greatest extent, repelling several Mongol invasions that threatened to overwhelm the subcontinent. He was also a radical administrator, implementing sweeping economic reforms, including price controls and a new taxation system, all to support his massive army. His reign was one of absolute power, marked by both brutal efficiency and ambitious state-building, leaving a legacy of a centralized, militaristic state. Perhaps the most enigmatic of all the sultans was Muhammad bin Tughlaq. An intellectual and a scholar, he was a man of grand, often disastrous ideas. In a bold move, he shifted the capital from Delhi hundreds of miles south to Dawlatabad, forcing the entire population to relocate, a venture that ended in immense suffering and failure. He also experimented with token currency, issuing brass and copper coins with the same value as gold and silver, which, unsurprisingly, led to rampant counterfeiting and economic chaos. His reign is a curious chapter of brilliant but flawed ambition, a cautionary tale of a ruler whose vision often outstripped the realities of his time. While the Delhi Sultanate held sway in the north, a magnificent Hindu empire rose to prominence in the south, acting as a bulwark against the Sultanate's expansion. This was the Vijayanagara Empire, the city of victory. For more than 2 centuries, it flourished as a center of power, wealth, and culture. Its capital city, at what is now Hampi, was honestly a marvel of the medieval world. Foreign travelers of the time described it as a sprawling metropolis, larger and grander than Rome, filled with bustling markets, splendid temples, and opulent palaces. It was a testament to the engineering and artistic genius of its people. The empire was a great patron of art, architecture, and literature, fostering a vibrant cultural environment where Sanskrit and regional languages like Kannada, Telugu, and Tamil thrived. The rulers oversaw the construction of breathtaking temple complexes, with intricately carved pillars and towering gopurams, or entrance towers, that still inspire awe today. The Virupaksha Temple and the Vitala Temple, with its famous stone chariot and musical pillars, are enduring symbols of the empire's artistic achievements. This was a realm that celebrated its faith and culture on a monumental scale. The empire reached its absolute peak under the rule of Krishna-Devaraya, who is, without a doubt, one of the most celebrated monarchs in Indian history. He was a brilliant military commander who secured the empire's borders and a wise administrator who oversaw a period of great prosperity. But he was also a great patron of the arts, a poet and scholar in his own right. His reign is remembered as a golden age for South India, a time of peace and plenty. Krishna-Devaraya's legacy is that of a benevolent and powerful king who embodied the ideal of a Hindu ruler, governing a realm that was a beacon of culture and resistance in a turbulent age. In the Deccan Plateau, the vast tableland of southern India, another powerful kingdom emerged, often in direct conflict with its southern neighbor, Vijayanagara. This was the Bahmani Sultanate, a Shia Muslim kingdom that was the first of its kind to establish an independent rule in the south. Founded by Alauddin Bahman Shah, who rebelled against the Delhi Sultanate under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the kingdom carved out a vast territory for itself. Its history is a complex saga of warfare, political intrigue, and remarkable cultural synthesis. The Bahmani rulers established their capitals first at Gulbarga and later at Bidar, transforming them into magnificent cities. They were great patrons of architecture, developing a unique Indo-Islamic style that blended Persian and Deccan influences. The great mosques, tombs, and fortresses they built, such as the Gol Gumbaz in Bijapur with its enormous dome and whispering gallery, really showcased their architectural ambition. The Sultanate also became a magnet for scholars, poets, and soldiers from Persia and Central Asia, creating a cosmopolitan court culture that was distinct from that of Delhi. The kingdom's administration was often in the hands of powerful prime ministers, most notably Mahmud Gawan. A brilliant Persian merchant who rose to become the chief minister, Gawan was a skilled administrator and military strategist. He expanded the kingdom, reformed the administration, and established a famous madrasa or college in Bidar, which attracted scholars from across the Muslim world. However, the Sultanate was plagued by internal strife between the local Deccan nobles and the foreign newcomers. This factionalism eventually tore the kingdom apart, leading to its fragmentation into 5 smaller Deccan sultanates, which would continue to shape the destiny of the region for centuries. In the early 16th century, the political landscape of northern India, dominated by the weakening Delhi Sultanate, was, well, really ripe for change. That change arrived from the mountains of Central Asia in the form of a formidable warrior and poet, Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. A descendant of 2 of the greatest conquerors in history, Timur on his father's side and Genghis Khan on his mother's, Babur was a man who believed conquest was his birthright. After losing his ancestral kingdom of Fergana, he established himself in Kabul, from where he cast his ambitious gaze towards the vast wealthy plains of Hindustan. Invited by discontented nobles of the Delhi Sultanate, Babur saw his opportunity. In 1526, he marched his relatively small army to the fields of Panipat. There, he faced the massive forces of the Sultan, Ibrahim Lodi. The battle that ensued would change the course of Indian history. Babur, a master of modern military tactics, employed a novel combination of mobile cavalry and artillery, including cannons and matchlock muskets, which were largely unknown in Indian warfare at the time. This technological and tactical superiority proved decisive. The Lodi army, despite its overwhelming numbers, was routed, and Ibrahim Lodi himself was slain on the battlefield. The victory at Panipat was swift and total. Babur marched on to capture Delhi and Agra, laying the foundation for what would become one of the most glorious empires the world has ever seen, the Mughal Empire. In his memoirs, the Baburnama, he wrote with a poet's eye about his new domain, its flora, fauna, and people. A conqueror from a foreign land, Babur had planted a seed that would grow into a dynasty, ruling the subcontinent for over 300 years. The fledgling Mughal Empire, established with such military brilliance by Babur, faced a perilous and uncertain future under his son, Humayun. Unlike his father, Humayun was not a natural warrior or a decisive leader. He was a learned man, with a keen interest in astronomy and astrology. But he lacked the ruthless pragmatism needed to consolidate his inheritance. His reign was immediately beset by challenges, not only from external rivals, but also from his own ambitious brothers who vied for control of the new empire. His gentle and forgiving nature was often seen as a weakness. Humayun's greatest adversary was Sher Shah Suri, a brilliant Afghan chieftain who rose from humble beginnings to challenge Mughal authority. A masterful strategist and administrator, Sher Shah defeated Humayun in a series of decisive battles, forcing the Mughal emperor to abandon his kingdom. This began a long and arduous period of exile for Humayun. He wandered through the deserts of Sindh and Rajasthan, a king without a kingdom, seeking refuge and allies. It was during this desperate time of wandering that his son, the future Emperor Akbar, was born. His fortunes finally turned when he found sanctuary in the court of the Safavid Shah of Persia. With Persian military support, Humayun began the long and difficult task of reclaiming his lost empire. After 15 years in exile, he finally defeated the successors of Sher Shah Suri and recaptured Delhi in 1555. He had, against all odds, restored the Mughal throne. Tragically, his second reign was to be short-lived. Just a few months later, he died after tumbling down the stone steps of his library. It was a fitting, if unfortunate, end for a scholar king whose life was a dramatic tale of loss, perseverance, and ultimate restoration. Following Humayun's untimely death, the fate of the Mughal Empire rested on the shoulders of a 13-year-old boy, his son Akbar. Guided in his early years by the able regent Bairam Khan, Akbar quickly matured into a formidable ruler in his own right. He was a military genius, possessed of immense physical courage and a strategic mind. Through a relentless series of campaigns over several decades, he not only reconquered the territories lost by his father, but also vastly expanded the empire, bringing most of the Indian subcontinent under his singular authority. But Akbar's true greatness lay not just in conquest, but in his visionary approach to governance. He understood that to rule a diverse land like India, force alone was not enough. He needed the loyalty of all his subjects, regardless of their faith. He embarked on a radical policy of reconciliation and inclusion. He abolished the jizya, a tax levied on non-Muslims, and welcomed Hindu Rajputs into the highest echelons of his administration and army, forging powerful alliances through marriage and mutual respect. This created a stable and multicultural nobility that was loyal to the Mughal throne. A man of deep intellectual curiosity, though he was himself illiterate, Akbar fostered an environment of open debate and dialogue at his court in Fatehpur Sikri. He built the Ibadat Khana, or house of worship, where scholars from various religions, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Jains, and Zoroastrians, gathered to discuss matters of theology and philosophy. From these discussions, he synthesized a new syncretic faith, Din-e-Ilahi, or religion of God, which combined elements from different traditions. Akbar the Great was more than a conqueror. He was the true architect of the Mughal Empire, a philosopher king who built a realm on the foundations of tolerance and unity. The empire that Akbar had so meticulously constructed was inherited by his son Salim, who ascended the throne with the title Jahangir, which means conqueror of the world. While he did not possess his father's ambition for military expansion or his genius for administration, Jahangir's reign was a period of relative stability and immense cultural refinement. He was, at his core, an aesthete, a man with a deep and abiding passion for the natural world and the arts. His court became a crucible of artistic innovation, especially in the realm of painting. Jahangir was honestly a connoisseur of art, with an almost scientific eye for detail. He patronized a workshop of brilliant artists who developed a distinctive style of Mughal painting, characterized by its exquisite naturalism and psychological depth. He commissioned detailed and lifelike portraits of his courtiers, and he had a particular fascination with depicting flora and fauna. If his artists painted a rare bird or an unusual flower, he would, without hesitation, demand absolute accuracy. His memoirs, the Tuzuki Jahangiri, are filled with meticulous observations of the world around him, revealing the mind of a keen naturalist. However, Jahangir's reign was not without its political dramas. He was known to be indulgent, with a fondness for wine and opium, and honestly, much of the day-to-day administration fell into the capable hands of his intelligent and ambitious wife, Empress Nur Jahan. She became the true power behind the throne, issuing edicts, having coins struck in her name, and skillfully navigating the complex politics of the Mughal court. Jahangir's era was thus a paradox, a time of political intrigue and personal indulgence, yet also a golden age for Mughal art, leaving behind a legacy of breathtaking beauty. The artistic inclinations of the Mughals reached their architectural zenith under Jahangir's son, Shah Jahan, whose name means King of the World. His reign is, without a doubt, universally recognized as the golden age of Mughal architecture. While his predecessors had built formidable forts and elegant tombs, Shah Jahan's ambition was to create paradise on earth, to build structures of such perfect symmetry and ethereal beauty that they would, honestly, stun the world. He possessed an unparalleled passion for building, pouring the immense wealth of the empire into his magnificent projects. He transformed the existing forts at Agra and Delhi, creating opulent marble palaces within their red sandstone walls. The Red Fort in Delhi, his new capital of Shah Jahanabad, was designed as a terrestrial reflection of the Islamic vision of paradise. But his name is, and forever will be, synonymous with one building above all others, the Taj Mahal. Commissioned as a mausoleum for his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died during childbirth, the Taj is more than a tomb. It is in a way an expression of eternal love rendered in white marble. For over 2 decades, thousands of artisans, sculptors, and calligraphers toiled to create this masterpiece on the banks of the Yamuna River. Inlaid with semi-precious stones and decorated with intricate calligraphy, it is a monument of perfect proportions and breathtaking grace. However, this architectural splendor came at a staggering cost. The immense expenditure on his building projects, coupled with costly military campaigns, placed a heavy strain on the imperial treasury. Shah Jahan's reign was one of unparalleled magnificence, but the foundations of the empire were beginning to show signs of strain under the weight of his grand ambitions. The final great Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, was a stark contrast to his predecessors. While his father, Shah Jahan, was a builder of monuments to love, Aurangzeb was a puritanical and orthodox ruler, a relentless military campaigner, and a shrewd but divisive politician. He actually seized the throne after a bitter war of succession against his brothers, imprisoning his own father in the Agra fort for the remainder of his life. His long reign of nearly 50 years would see the Mughal Empire expand to its greatest ever territorial extent, yet it would, unfortunately, also sow the seeds of its eventual collapse. A devout Muslim, Aurangzeb sought to govern his vast, multi-religious empire according to his strict interpretation of Islamic law. He reversed many of Akbar's policies of religious tolerance. He reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims, demolished a number of Hindu temples, and banned music and art from his court, viewing them as decadent. These policies created deep resentment among many of his subjects, particularly the Hindu Rajputs and Marathas, who had once been loyal pillars of the empire. His orthodoxy alienated key allies and fueled widespread rebellion. Aurangzeb spent the last 26 years of his reign in the Deccan, leading a series of grueling and seemingly endless military campaigns against the resilient Marathas and the Deccan Sultanates. While he succeeded in conquering the last of the Sultanates, he could never fully subdue the Marathas. The constant warfare drained the imperial treasury, exhausted the army, and left the northern heartland of the empire neglected and vulnerable. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, he left behind an empire that was larger than ever before, but also fatally weakened, fractured by rebellion, and on the brink of disintegration. As the power of the Mughals began to wane under Aurangzeb, a new force rose from the rugged hills of the Western Ghats. This was the Maratha Empire, a Hindu confederacy that would not only challenge the Mughals, but eventually supplant them as the dominant power in the subcontinent. The catalyst for this resurgence, its inspirational founder, was Shivaji Maharaj. A brilliant guerrilla tactician and a charismatic leader, Shivaji carved out an independent kingdom in the heart of Mughal territory, becoming a symbol of resistance and Hindu pride. Shivaji's genius lay in his mastery of guerrilla warfare, using the mountainous terrain of his homeland to his advantage. He led daring raids on Mughal strongholds, famously using tiger claws to defeat the formidable Mughal general Afzal Khan. He built a network of formidable hill forts that served as the backbone of his kingdom and established a disciplined army and navy. He was crowned Chhatrapati, or sovereign monarch, in a grand ceremony, formally establishing a Hindu kingdom at a time when the Mughals seemed invincible. His legacy inspired generations of Marathas to follow. After Shivaji's death, the empire continued to expand under a series of able hereditary prime ministers known as the Peshwas. From their base in Pune, they directed the Maratha armies across India. Maratha horsemen galloped from their homeland in Maharashtra to the gates of Delhi in the north, to Bengal in the east, and deep into the south. For a time in the mid-18th century, they were the masters of India, controlling a vast swathe of territory and collecting tribute from erstwhile provinces of the Mughal Empire. They had shattered the myth of Mughal invincibility and redrawn the map of power in India. In the northwest, in the fertile land of the 5 rivers known as Punjab, another indigenous power rose in the vacuum left by the declining Mughals. This was the Sikh Empire, a state forged by the military prowess and political acumen of one remarkable man, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The Sikhs, a religious community that had been militarized over centuries of persecution by the Mughals, were divided into numerous warring factions known as missals. Ranjit Singh, the leader of the Sukha missile, possessed the vision to unite these disparate groups. Through a combination of diplomacy, strategic alliances, and military conquest, Ranjit Singh brought all the Sikh missals under his control. In 1799, he captured the city of Lahore, which he made his capital, and in 1801, he was proclaimed Maharaja of Punjab. He went on to create a powerful secular empire that included not only Sikhs, but also Muslims and Hindus in key positions of power. His court was famed for its splendor, and he was known to possess the legendary Koh-i-Noor diamond. He was a shrewd and pragmatic ruler, respected by his subjects and feared by his enemies. Ranjit Singh's greatest achievement was building a formidable modern army, the Khalsa Army, trained and equipped along European lines with the help of foreign officers, including French generals who had served under Napoleon. This powerful military force not only secured his empire's borders against Afghan incursions, but also acted as a powerful deterrent to the ambitions of the British East India Company, which was rapidly expanding its control over the rest of India. For as long as the line of Punjab lived, the British dared not cross the Sutlej River into his domain, making the Sikh Empire the last great indigenous power to hold out against colonial expansion. In the south, as the British East India Company extended its influence, it met its most implacable and technologically savvy foe in the Kingdom of Mysore. While the kingdom was ruled by the Wadiyar dynasty, real power was wielded by 2 brilliant military leaders, Hyder Ali and his son, Tipu Sultan. Hyder Ali, a soldier of humble origins, rose through the ranks to become the de facto ruler of Mysore, transforming it into a major military power that repeatedly challenged the British. Upon his father's death, Tipu Sultan, known as the Tiger of Mysore, continued this fierce resistance. He was far more than just a warrior. He was a modernizer and an innovator. Fascinated by Western science and technology, he sought to use it to drive the British out of India. He established a state-run trading company, introduced new forms of currency and administration, and most significantly, pioneered the use of rocketry in warfare. The Mysorean rockets, with their iron casings and extended range, inflicted panic and heavy casualties on British forces, a technology they would later study and adopt themselves. Tipu Sultan was a devout Muslim, but ruled over a predominantly Hindu population, and his legacy remains complex and debated. To the British, he was a ruthless tyrant, a dangerous fanatic who had to be eliminated. To many Indians, he is a heroic freedom fighter, a visionary monarch who fought and died defending his kingdom from foreign invaders. He fought 4 separate wars against the British, seeking alliances with the French and even the Ottoman Sultan. He was finally killed in 1799 during the dramatic siege of his capital, Seringapatam, fighting to the very last. His death removed a major obstacle to British domination of the subcontinent. In the arid lands of Rajasthan, the so-called Land of Kings, a proud and martial people, the Rajputs, had for centuries carved out powerful kingdoms. Organized into fiercely independent clans, they were renowned for their chivalry, their patronage of art and architecture, and above all, their unyielding warrior spirit. Throughout the medieval period, they stood as a formidable barrier to the ambitions of the Delhi Sultanate and later the Mughal Empire. Their history, honestly, is a saga of heroic resistance against overwhelming odds. Figures like Rana Sanga of Mewar became legends. He united a confederacy of Rajput kings to challenge the first Mughal emperor Babur at the Battle of Kanwa. Though ultimately defeated by Babur's superior artillery, his defiance set a precedent for Rajput resistance. Perhaps the most celebrated of all Rajput heroes is Maharana Pratap, also of Mewar. He refused to submit to the might of Emperor Akbar, choosing a life of hardship in the Aravalli hills over the comfort of a vassal king. The Battle of Haldigati, where Maharana Pratap and his small force faced the massive Mughal army, is etched into the folklore of India. Riding his beloved horse, Chetak, he fought with immense courage, becoming an enduring symbol of patriotism and the struggle for freedom. Though many Rajput states eventually accepted Mughal suzerainty, forming strategic alliances, this spirit of independence never truly died. The magnificent forts and palaces that dot the landscape of Rajasthan, from Chittorgarh to Kumbhalgarh, stand as silent stone testaments to the pride and defiance of the Rajput rulers. A new kind of ruler was now making its presence felt, one that was not a king or an emperor, but a corporation. The British East India Company, which had arrived on the subcontinent's shores in the early 17th century as a humble trading entity, began to transform into a political and military power. Initially focused on trading spices, textiles, and tea, the company skillfully exploited the political fragmentation that followed the decline of the Mughal Empire. It played one local ruler against another, using its superior military discipline and naval power to gain influence and territory. The pivotal moment came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. Here, a small force of company soldiers, led by the ambitious and cunning Robert Clive, defeated the much larger army of the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah. The victory was achieved as much through conspiracy and bribery as through military might. With this single battle, the company became the de facto ruler of Bengal, the richest province in India. The vast revenues of Bengal now flowed into the company's coffers, funding its private army and fueling its territorial ambitions. From this foothold in Bengal, the company's power grew exponentially. Over the next century, through a series of wars, treaties, and annexations, it brought state after state under its control. The Marathas, the Sikhs, the rulers of Mysore, all were eventually subdued. The company was no longer just a trading firm. It had become an aggressive, imperialistic state, ruling over millions of people. It was a strange and unprecedented form of governance, where a board of directors in London dictated the fate of a subcontinent, all in the pursuit of profit. The rule of the East India Company, marked by rampant corruption and exploitation, culminated in a massive and violent uprising in 1857. Known in Britain as the Indian Mutiny and in India as the First War of Independence, this rebellion shook the foundations of company rule. Though it was ultimately suppressed with great brutality, it marked the end of the company's reign. The British government, alarmed by the scale of the uprising, decided that it could no longer entrust the governance of such a vast territory to a private enterprise. In 1858, the British Parliament passed the Government of India Act, transferring all powers directly to the British Crown. The era of the British Raj had officially begun. India was now the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, its most prized and profitable possession. A viceroy was appointed to rule in the monarch's name, governing a complex administration that controlled everything from the military and taxation to the construction of railways and telegraph lines, infrastructure designed to tighten Britain's grip on the subcontinent. The symbolic culmination of this new order came in 1876, when British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli had Queen Victoria proclaimed Empress of India. This title was designed to cement British authority and place the British monarch on an equal, if not superior footing, to the great emperors of India's past, like the Mughals. The Nizams, Maharajas, and Nawabs who still ruled their princely states were now vassals of a distant empress. The subcontinent, once a land of countless kings and diverse empires, was now united under a single foreign imperial ruler, setting the stage for the final chapter in its long history of rule, the struggle for independence. The declaration of Queen Victoria as Empress of India marked the end of one long story and the beginning of another. The subsequent struggle for independence, led by a new generation of leaders, would ultimately bring the age of monarchs and foreign emperors to a close in the mid-20th century. With the birth of new nations like India and Pakistan, the formal systems of monarchy and princely rule that had defined the subcontinent for millennia were officially abolished. The crowns were laid down, the thrones emptied, and the scepters of power passed into the hands of the people. Yet the story did not end there. The echoes of these ancient thrones still resonate in modern South Asia. Many of the royal families, though stripped of their ruling powers, continued to hold significant influence. They retained their wealth, their palaces, and their social prestige, with some transitioning into new roles in democratic politics, business, or as cultural custodians. Their legacies persist in the magnificent forts and palaces that are now national treasures, in the art and culture they patronized, and in the very names of the cities and regions they once ruled. The history of the subcontinent is a rich, complex, and deeply layered narrative. We have journeyed through only a fraction of its epic tales of power, ambition, faith, and artistry. The stories of these rulers, from the wise Ashoka to the defiant Tipu Sultan, are not merely relics of the past. They are threads woven into the vibrant fabric of present-day South Asia. I invite you to continue this journey, to delve deeper into the histories of these remarkable kingdoms and the people who shaped them. For in understanding their past, we can better appreciate the world they left behind.